educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. I have an individual who is an innovator. He's a business consultant. He has done a lot of things in his life, and I just want to make sure that we don't mistake, who this individual is. And he goes by a lot of different names too. And one interesting one is the cleaner. And but throughout a roller coaster of a career that has spanned acting, advertising, consulting, technology, and now entrepreneurship, he has developed a habit of helping companies create new products and services and launch new ventures. But in the past, he has been called a product person, a UX guy, a designer, strategist, a marketer, and a creative. Today, he is the founder of Apollo 21, a company which sits at the intersection of a business consultancy, a product of design studio, and a venture studio. Apollo 21 helps companies foster innovation, leverage venture-driven growth, and remove barriers to scale by building technology that solves complex business and operational challenges. A lot of times, we listen to bios like this, and we're like, hey, you know what, Danny, who is our guest today? What does all of that mean, man?
Yeah, that's a fair question. It's a little bit of a mouthful.
Right.
First off, thanks for having me. In simple terms, what it means is we generally help our clients do any of three things. So we help them build new technology products that they will then sell to their customers to help develop a new revenue line, a new market segment, something like that. We help our customers build operational technology to streamline how work happens within their own walls. And then we also work with our clients to help them understand what it means to commit to innovation, quote unquote, and what the operational and cultural impacts of that effort are, and why perhaps the metrics and the things that they've been looking at in the past have stymied their ability to truly become innovative.
So here's a question, because we're talking about being innovative, being ahead of the game. A lot of times we feel as though that what we think of in our mind has already been done, right? And that's number one. And then number two, a lot of times people say, hey, in order for us to be successful, we have to copy someone else. So what is the true value of being innovative in any industry?
The true value in it, in my opinion, is longevity, really, when it comes down to it. So if you want to build a company that's going to last into the future and see success over lengthy periods of time, you have to innovate. Otherwise, you're going to continue doing the same thing that you're doing. And then eventually somebody will come up from behind and they will steal your business, eat your lunch, whatever you want to call it. But the simple fact is that if you're not experimenting and looking for new opportunities for growth, new ways to serve your customers, new things that you can bring to market, then you're kind of already on the path towards slow death.
So again, I'm not creative enough. I'm not imaginative. I have no imagination, Danny. I suck at drawing, creating stories, all those type of things. I didn't do very well in elementary school when I had to write book reports. For those of us who had to write book reports, right? So how do I put myself in that creative space if I feel as though I'm not in that space?
That's actually a really good question, and there's a very easy answer to it. The benefit of being an established company and looking to continue down the path of innovation is that there's a really good chance that you've already got customers. And those are the people where your creativity can come from. If you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to continue to grow your business, and if you don't know what to bring to market that will continue to keep you top of mind and continue to allow you to find new customers and serve customers, talk to the ones that you already have. Ask them what their problems are. Figure out where those problems align to your capabilities as a business and focus on solving those problems in that tiny little sweet spot. That right there is innovation.
So one of the things that in order for us to get that type of information, a lot of times we have to look at the feedback loop, right? In any business, we got to hear the feedback, right? But a lot of times when we hear how to change to grow or whatever it is, we take it as criticism, and then our ego get in the way, right?
Yes. Yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, you have to set the ego aside, and you have to be willing to hear that your baby is ugly and that some people aren't going to like it, and that's fine.
Right.
What we have to get past is the notion that every single thing has to be perfect and that we have to be perfect. Nobody is perfect. No company is perfect. No person is perfect. And everybody realizes that. And the reality is, if what you're creating or what you have already create and are selling isn't perfect for a customer, then they're probably just not a customer, in which case you may end up not talking to them through the process that I'm talking about.
Right.
But the reality is that, there's plenty of opportunity there for discovery, plenty of opportunity for growth. And you hinted at this a moment ago as we were talking before we jumped in, Maurice, but part of that is becoming comfortable with failure. And failure is a really difficult thing because we are taught from the time that we, are tiny little things that failing is bad. If you fail a grade, you get held back, you get laughed at, whatever the case is. If you failed a test, your parents got pissed at you or whatever it was. And that works for a time, that works when you're young and a child. But the reality is, as we grow into adulthood, and particularly as we focus on what it takes to establish, operate, and grow a business, failure is inevitable. And so one of the biggest things in my mind to overcoming the idea that your ego is going to get in the way is to come to terms with the fact that failure is not necessarily a bad thing. Failure is simply how we learn. And so if you look at those failures as learning experiences and opportunities to understand, for example, from your customers, what they want from you, what you have done well, and perhaps what you haven't, then what you've got in front of you is a huge growth opportunity. And that's where you need to focus. So
in a world like today where everyone gets a trophy, even if you're just participating, right? And so again, from, like you said, from a young age as of today, we're not understanding that, hey, we have to learn from those failure moments, those places where we did get second or third place. Like, winning is not always, yes, you get the accolades, yes, you get the camera, the picture, all that type of stuff. But you probably win more as being second or third place, because now you have something to grow from, understand where your weaknesses are and all that type of stuff. And a lot of times we don't embrace really what failure really is, where it really is a success moment.
Yes. Yes, I agree completely. There's a couple of things that come to mind immediately as you're talking about sort of embracing the idea of being in second place. One of the rental car companies, it was either Hertz or Avis, and I can't remember who was first and who was second, but for a long time had a tagline of, I don't remember it exactly, but it was something along the lines of, we're second best. And that means that we're always trying harder to do well for you, the customer. And so, that's a great mentality to layer into the idea of not winning, quote unquote. The other one that I'll point out is Apple, for example, is notorious for being a second mover and taking their time to bring something to market where it gives them the chance to watch and see what's happening and look for the points of failure where their competitors are struggling, and then fix those so that by the time they get to market, the thing that they have created is Apple worthy, is all of the things that we know and love, hate, whatever Apple for. Right. And so to your point, the thing to keep in mind here is, business isn't the Olympics, because it's top of mind since it's happening right now. But there's no silver medal and bronze medal. There's not really a second place in business. You can be the second biggest business in an industry and be insanely successful doing so. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you can run an insanely successful business and you're in second place, man, congratulations.
I know, right? But again, you don't look at it from that perspective. Everyone's gunning to be number one. Don't realize that, hey, you still, as you just stated, you're still a success.
Right.
Because you beat out everybody else at least.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, it takes time to sort of retrain your brain to think about it that way. Right? And that's why I bring up sort of the notion of failure is ingrained as a bad thing from childhood. It takes years to get to the point where you go, oh, wait, failure is not actually a bad thing. Failure is how I figure out what works and doesn't work and figure out how to move forward.
Right.
And so it's an intense mind shift that you have to sort of wrap your head around, and it's going to take a little while. You know, you're not going to wake up tomorrow and go, oh yeah, I'm good with being second.
I
It's
know, right?
fine.
Right. You know, and so I'm going to hop back real quick. You mentioned something about being innovative, but you also mentioned Apple, right? And Apple coming out second with a product. So are they really innovative, or are they just jumping on? Again, we're not bashing nobody. We're not talking to anybody, you know, whatever. But, you know, it's just the idea like, hey, because being innovative, you have the idea that, hey, I have to be number one in that industry. I have to come out with it first. I have to be the one that get a trademark, patent, all that type of stuff first. So how can I be innovative if someone else has already come up with that idea?
I think that a lot of that comes down to defining what you mean by innovative. And, you know, to your point, a lot of people think of innovative as, oh, I have to be the first person to come up with this idea and get it to market. I have to change the way that everybody does a thing in order to be considered innovative. And I would pose the question of, is Apple not innovating purely in the fact that they are running their business by being second and best, not being second best, but literally being second to market and doing it better than everybody else? That is an innovative business model that a lot of people would look at and go, oh, I never really thought about doing it that way. Innovation isn't limited to the thing, the tangible, either physical or technological or whatever thing that you're putting out into the world. Innovation can come to life as new business models, as new ways of thinking, new ways to approach problems, et cetera. And so I think, again, we're kind of shortchanging ourselves if we're limiting our ability to consider ourselves innovators by whether or not we got there first. You know, again, get there second, do it better, make an impact, and I consider that innovative.
And again, we're going back to that feedback loop, right? If we start to look at those companies that have, yes, they might have been first, but there's some issues. There might have been some challenges. There might have been a software flaw. There might have been a design flaw, whatever it might have been. There were some flaws in there where you can kind of grow from that. Now, all that's not always, you don't always know about it, you know, at least from the company perspective, but you hear little trickling things on Twitter and Instagram, you know, whatever. So I think that's opportunities for you to learn and grow and understand what the market really is for that particular product.
Without question. And I think that I would encourage companies and people at companies to think carefully about what that feedback loop looks like, because a lot of companies consider that feedback loop, oh yeah, we talked to our customers, we sent them a customer satisfaction survey or, you know, an NPS survey or whatever that is. And that's great. That'll get you some feedback. There is actionable data that will come out of that, but that is not talking to your customers.
Right.
That is not engaging in conversation. And to be clear, when I say talk to your customers, I mean it kind of literally. Go and sit down and talk to them. Have this conversation with them and explain to them, hey, I'm not calling you to sell you something. I'm calling because I've seen you've bought 3 Apple computers in the last year, just to keep on the train of the example here. We would love to take 15 minutes of your time to understand what you love and, more importantly, what you don't love about thing X, your MacBook, or, you know, whatever, my coffee cup, whatever it is. You know, the conversation there and the opportunity to really see and hear somebody's reactions to the questions that you ask them and to understand their problems is so important, because a survey will never inform you of the emotional side of how somebody is reacting to something. You lose out on the emotional side of the feedback loop. And in my experience, where you find emotion is where you find opportunity. When people are excited about the thing that you've put in front of them, that's where you can learn something from them. And perhaps even more importantly, when people are intensely frustrated with something that you put in front of them, that's a really good place to learn from people. And you don't get that from, I mean, you kind of get it from, you know, a survey. Oh no, I wouldn't recommend this to a friend, but nobody's going to take the time to really explain to you why they're not going to recommend it to a friend. You need to get them in front of you and go, okay, what part of this isn't working? Show me your workflow. Explain to me, show me, demonstrate for me the point in that workflow where you get really frustrated. And I'm guilty of this. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I try out a new SaaS product and I'm 5 steps into a 23-step onboarding process going, oh my God, did nobody think about this?
Right.
Please. Those are the moments where you go, oh, yeah, well, yeah, maybe it didn't need to be 23 steps. We could have done that better.
Right. And I think because you're talking about the emotion of our customer. Now, understand, and when I say customer, they're both internal and external customers. I just want to make sure we're clear on that too, right? Being our employees. So, but in that, do we need to concentrate in our being innovative and creative to make sure that we keep our mission and our vision statements, right, in mind as we're moving forward? Because sometimes in that innovative or creative space, we get influenced by someone else and we lose truly who we really are trying to again get out to market.
Yes, without question. I'm going to butcher this because I can't remember the exact quote off the top of my head here, but there's a great statement. I think it was by one of the folks at, early Toyota, who of course were some of the insane innovators when it came to manufacturing and thinking about the processes there. And not only were they innovative in terms of manufacturing process, but where they were really unique was the way that they structured their company and enabled their staff, their employees to understand the core vision of what the company was after, but also have the freedom to explore ways to achieve what that vision is aiming to uphold. And so to your point, there is a moment in that where you have to keep that vision in mind and keep it in check. And that's part of why, teams are a good structure. You might have an amazing idea that I might look at and go, hey, Maurice, that's an amazing idea. But,
Right.
Our vision and our goal is this. That kind of sits outside of it. And at least then there's an opportunity for a dialogue where, I don't know, maybe you have a different perspective on how to interpret the vision and you believe that your idea fits and I need to be educated on that. And maybe I come around or maybe I don't. But, the beauty of having widely enabled teams who are working towards an overarching goal is that you have the flexibility to think about and experiment and try weird things that may lead to unique innovation and may be totally misaligned to your vision. And either way, they're worth pursuing because maybe there's a new company that comes out of that or an entire new product line that allows you to think about how your vision comes to life in a new and different way. And so yes, you have to keep the vision in mind and you have to keep the overarching strategy in mind, but not so much so that it limits your ability to try weird things.
Okay. Now let me ask this though, because you mentioned teams, but again, the listeners, they're just starting out, so they haven't quite developed a team 100%. But they might have been trying this particular item for the last, let's say, 3 years. Let's give them 3 years, right? So how do we continue to be on the cutting edge, being creative, if I'm a solopreneur and I haven't totally gone all the way out there as of yet?
That's an excellent question. I think that's one of the difficulties of being a solopreneur is that you don't have the opportunity to turn to the person next to you, your co-founder, whoever it is, and say to them, I have this really weird idea. Am I insane or is this awesome? And knowing that they will answer truthfully without any kind of, personal bias or anything built in there. But the ways around that are, find some advisors or some people who understand your business that you can talk to on a monthly basis, that you can bounce those weird ideas off of. Find other solopreneurs and small team founders who are in a similar spot and create those networks for yourself so that you have those people around you that you can bounce those ideas off of. And, things like accelerator programs and even just co-working spaces, things like that are great ways to cultivate those kinds of relationships and those kinds of team mentalities, even as a solopreneur or a small team, because they give you access to people who are in a like-minded space, who are pursuing kind of similar ideals, even if they're in an entirely different industry. They know what you're going through. They know the trials and tribulations of, trying to make it work with a small team. And usually, in my experience, those people are pretty willing to have those conversations because they're every bit as starved for it as you are.
Right.
And so, you can cultivate these awesome little groups of people that can sort of serve as sounding boards for you, either formally or informally.
So Danny, I've heard this before, man. Like, I'm supposed to be in these groups. I'm supposed to go and network with people, and I got to change my breakfast table mentality, right? But I'm an introvert, Danny. Like, I don't know how to get around these 5 people, that's going to make a change to help me be creative. But so how do I get over being an introvert? Like, I don't like people, in my opinion.
I hear that loud and clear. I too have come to terms with my somewhat introverted personality. The way that I have worked around that is by sort of coming to terms with and understanding just sort of what that means for me, and then figuring out where I'm comfortable and where I'm not. So for me, for example, what I have realized is going to network events where everybody's standing around with a name tag and a cheap cocktail in their hand or whatever, to me is like the most painful thing you could put me through. I hate that. I don't like randomly having to walk up to people and going, so what do you do?
Right,
Tell me about it. Because like, I'm going to sound like a complete jerk here, but the ultimate reality is I have trouble caring. Like, I don't know why I should care. And in that moment, often people aren't great at sort of explaining things in a way that makes me go, oh, that's really interesting. I understand why I should care. But what I have found for me is that smaller group environments work really well. And so one of the ways that I've overcome that, slight tangent, my wife and I moved back to New York about 1.5 years ago after a 6-year hiatus on the West Coast. And when I moved back, I knew that I needed to, find my way into groups of like-minded people in the technology and entrepreneurship space here in New York. And so I started hosting founders dinners. Once a month, I host a small group dinner with myself and 5 other founders or senior level folks in the technology space in New York City. And it's a much more comfortable environment for me. I have found that, 5 or 6 people around a table with a meal in front of them, and there's no purpose. There's no, there's no 20 questions that we throw out at the table. There's no card games or anything like that. The only question that I ever ask is, please introduce yourself and tell us what you do. And what I have found is that by the time you get around a table of 6 people, everybody talking about what they do takes, anywhere from half an hour to an hour by the time you get through it, and people are peppering one another with questions and all that fun stuff. And really the conversation just unfolds. And so for me, that works for my sort of style of introvertedness because it puts me in a situation that I know I'm comfortable with. And so to get back to your question, my answer would be figure out what being introverted means to you and where you are and are not comfortable, and then use that to work to your advantage. So if you're comfortable being somewhat anonymous in a big crowd, go to a networking event and put a name tag on and see who comes up and talks to you and have a conversation. If you're like me and you're not that, find something else that works.
Well, you know what, Danny? I thank you for coming on the show. And for some of us, right, we feel a lot easier, a lot better when we can talk to someone, whether it's over a phone, through something like this, virtually, or even email. So, Danny, I'm looking to be creative and I'm looking to be innovative in my industry. Where can I reach out to you and talk to you and find out more information about you?
Yeah, first of all, please do. I'm more than happy to. The best place to find us is on our website. It's apollo2121.io. And then, of course, I'm personally on socials. I'm blah, 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 / among many on just about everything. You can find Apollo 21 on socials as well. If you happen to be in the New York area and you want to join us for a founders dinner, please reach out, come. They're totally open for whoever wants to join us. Nice. And then the other thing that we're working on right now that I think aligns to the type of folks that you're talking about is we're building out what I call a pre-accelerator program. And it is explicitly designed for folks who are at that I have an idea stage and either don't know how to move forward, don't know how to connect with people that can help them through the process, et cetera. And so our goal is to help guide those folks through the ideals of customer development to de-risk and really articulate and validate the idea that they have for their business. And ideally in the process, connect founders with one another in their cohort, and then also with other experts beyond the Apollo 21 team who can bring some sort of help to the table.
Oh, nice. Now, of course, if you're listening in your car, you're listening while you're working, you don't have the time. Of course, this information will be in the description, so it will always be there. So you'll be able to go back to that. But Danny, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Sure, no problem. Now, Danny, I forgot to let you know, man. I have my world famous question that I ask everybody, man. My would you rather question, right?
Lay it on me.
Would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road? Now, there's no parameters. No, use your imagination, right? You're creative, right? So no parameters. So would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
Fork in the road.
And why a fork?
To me, the idea of a fork in the road represents a journey. And all of this ends up coming down to reveling in and surviving the journey, whether it's good or bad and whether you're successful or not. And so, to me, 3 doors is God only knows what's behind either one, but you aren't going to go very far in the next room. Whereas if there's a fork in the road, I can go as far as I want and figure it out as I go.
Nice, man. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Sure. Thank you very much. And of course, thank y'all for listening to That Will Never Work podcast. And I'll talk to you a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?